Hello, everyone. Rascals ready? I'm ready. I hope we're ready over the next few weeks to learn more about Hartford history. Let's get started. Sailing Through Time with the Roberts by Robin C. Author's note. Dedication. This book is dedicated to my mom, Ina Roberts, for encouraging my curiosity of all things, to my father, Richard Siebold, for nurturing my love of history, to my mother, Donna Siebold Grubb, and my sister, Kim Siebold, for their love and support. This book is also dedicated to all the third graders in Hartford County. I hope you love to learn history as much as I do. Preface. Meet the Roberts. Mary and John Roberts are twins. They love to ride their bikes, skateboard, hike, camp, and read. They live in Havre de Grace, Maryland with their mom, dad, grandfather, and their dog, Chessie. Last fall, right before they began second grade, they moved back to Havre de Grace when Mom and Dad were transferred to Aberdeen Proving Ground. Mom and Dad worked there full-time as scientists. Gramps had asked them to come live with him since he has a big house with room for all of them. Gramps takes care of the twins when they aren't in school. Mary and John love his stories about growing up in Havre de Grace, and they love the places he takes them. Today is the first day of summer vacation. Mary comes bouncing into John's room and jumps on his bed. "Where do you think Gramps is going to take us today?" she asks. "I don't know," said John. "Well, hurry up and get out of bed, sleepyhead. I smell pancakes and I'm headed downstairs." Both children race downstairs to the kitchen where Gramps is making breakfast. "Good morning," they shout. "Where are we going today?" "It's a surprise," Gramps tells them. "Sit down and eat. I'll tell you a story about where we are going. This place has exhibits that show how the local Native Americans lived, what the area looked like, and how the Susquehanna River and the Chesapeake Bay were very important for travel. We are going to sail back to the early 1600s. Exhibits? What type of exhibits? Who were the Native Americans? Was there anyone else? Wow! The 1600s? That's over 400 years ago. Mary and John's questions and statements tumbled out of them as they excitedly thought about what Gramps was telling them. Gramps laughed. "Slow down. I'll explain everything. We're going to the Havre de Grace Maritime Museum to learn about the Susquehanna Indians and Captain John Smith." Mary and John exchanged looks. Captain John Smith. Where had they heard about him? Gramps saw their puzzled look. "Is that look about Captain Smith or the Susquehannocks?" "Captain John Smith. Where have we heard about him before?" they replied. Gramps answered, "He's one of the men who helped found this settlement at Jamestown, Virginia. Remember, we visited the Jamestown site last summer. Also, Smith is the one Pocahontas saved. Remember the movie?" "That's right. But what does John Smith have to do with Hartford County or Havre de Grace?" the twins asked. Remember how part of John Smith's job for the Virginia Company was to see what natural resources were here and what the land areas were like? Well, Captain Smith sailed up the Chesapeake Bay and made maps and notes of the things he found as he went. He met several different tribes of Native Americans. The tribe that considered this area home was the Susquehannocks. They traded furs with Smith and showed him how to catch crabs and oysters and dig for clams. Smith saw the large amounts of ducks, geese, and other birds that were here. He found freshwater sources as well as finding lots of timber forests that could be used for building ships and buildings. John interrupted Gramps. "But what does that have to do with Havre de Grace?" Gramps smiled. "Well, in June 1608, Captain Smith and his small group sailed all the way up here and went up the Susquehanna River as far as Deer Creek. He had to stop because the water was too shallow for the boat and it had rapids. He named it Smith's Falls. There is a historical marker on the Cecil County side of the river showing exactly where the falls are located. It is near the town of Port Deposit. Mary squealed with delight. Ah! John Smith was here in Harford County? Where? When exactly? Tell me more. Mary had really liked this story of John Smith and Pocahontas. Not now, Gramps teased. You'll have to wait until we get to the museum to find out. Now, go get dressed. Gramps smiled as the children left the kitchen. He had a very special surprise in store for the children. He thought about when he was first given the tiny skipjack carving by his uncle, Paul Gibson. Gramps had been about Mary and John's age when he was first introduced to the skipjack. It was the winter of his second grade year in school, when he had begun sweeping the floors in Uncle Paul's decoy shop. While waiting for the twins to get dressed, Gramps began daydreaming about the first day the little skipjack had sent him back in time. He remembered it clearly since it was the first time he had gone exploring along the old, overgrown Susquehanna and Tidewater Canal towpath. He had been looking at the little skipjack and had wondered out loud, I wonder what it was like to live and work on a canal barge, when all of a sudden the carving grew warm in his hand and everything around him got foggy. And when the air cleared, he was still standing on the canal path, but everything looked totally different. The towpath was clear. There was a barge in the canal near him, and a huge mule was standing next to him. Gramps was startled out of his daydream as the twins came tearing into the kitchen wanting to get their adventure started. He put the little skipjack carving in his pocket for later. Are you ready? We're walking to the Maritime Museum since it is so close to home. Gramps, Mary, and John walked to the end of their house's sidewalk and turned right toward the Susquehanna River. They turned right at the end of Revolution Street and walked the few blocks of Concord Street to the museum. They had walked this way many times with Gramps on their way to the promenade walkway. The twins enjoyed looking for ducks, geese, great blue herons, and gravel barges on the Susquehanna River. During their walks, Gramps had told them how this area had been covered with trees and how the only walkways had been Native American trails through the woods. He told the twins that the Susquehannocks had used dugout canoes to travel on the waterways, since this was the fastest way to travel. He explained to them that the Susquehannocks would come to this area in the summer to fish, catch oysters, and dig for clams. The Susquehannocks had villages in the area and had planted beans, squash, and corn. They would also collect different types of berries to eat. As they walked along, Gramps took the small carved boat out of his pocket and handed it to John. Mary peered into John's hand. What is that, Gramps? She asked. It is a hand-carved toy skipjack. I've had it since I was your age. It is very special. You could say even magical. Gramps smiled at the children. Here, I want you two to have it. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. John turned it over in his hand to look at it thoroughly. He took notice of all its tiny details, from the tiny cabin on its deck to the tiny cloth sails attached to the teeny mast to how it was painted. John admired its graceful lines. When he finished examining the little skipjack, he handed it to his sister. Mary carefully took the tiny ship and examined it with as much intensity as her brother had. She thought it was beautiful and wondered why Gramps said it was magical. By this time, they were at the Maritime Museum, so she put it into her pocket. She would ask Gramps more about the skipjack when they got home later. What's next? Chapter 1. Meet the Susquehannocks and John Smith. Harford history, here we come.